$185,000, Dad. Tonight, don't let me down. My daughter Sofia stood in my kitchen like a bill collector, her designer heels clicking against the tile floor I'd installed with my own hands 20 years ago. The morning light caught the gold bracelet on her wrist, the one I'd bought her for graduation. Now she was using that same wrist to drop a thick manila folder on my kitchen table like it was a grocery list. I poured coffee with steady hands, though my chest was already tightening. The familiar weight of dread settled in my stomach as I smiled and said, "Let me think about it." Sofia left at 8 a.m. 6 hours later, so did I. When she returned at 7 that evening expecting a check, she found an empty house, a locked door, and an envelope. What was inside made her scream, made her hire a lawyer, made her realize her personal ATM machine had just vanished into thin air. I'm Mason Brooks, 58 years old, and I'm grateful you're here listening to my story. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment. Where are you watching this from? And what time is it right now? Because what I'm about to share changed everything I thought I knew about family, love, and the difference between helping and enabling. I should have known something was wrong when I heard that car door slam at 7 in the morning. The sound cut through the quiet like a gunshot. Sofia never visited this early unless she needed something. And when Sofia needed something, it always cost me. I need $185,000, Dad. Marcus's debt. The words hit me before I'd even finished pouring my first cup of coffee. She dropped that folder on my kitchen table with the same casual confidence she'd had since childhood. The absolute certainty that Daddy would fix everything. Not a request, a statement, a demand disguised as family duty. She stood there in her pressed business suit, phone in one manicured hand, thumb already scrolling through messages. She didn't even look at me when she spoke. To her, I wasn't a person having a morning coffee. I was a resource to be accessed. I stared at the folder. Manila, thick, the kind that meant serious trouble, the kind that had shown up twice before in the last 2 years, each time with a smaller number but the same expectation. "It's what fathers do," she said without glancing up from her phone. "You don't need that money anyway. You're 58. Expenses are minimal. Minimal." The word stuck in my throat like a fishbone. I opened the folder with trembling fingers. Bank statements, loan contracts, Marcus's signature scrawled across document after document, and that number staring back at me in cold, unforgiving black ink. $185,000. Nearly everything I had left after 35 years of breaking my back at Boeing Defense. Every overtime shift, every Christmas bonus, every vacation I didn't take because Victoria said we needed to save. All of it, reduced to Sofia's casual assumption that it belonged to her. "Sofia?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. She checked her watch. "Gold, expensive, probably another gift I'd forgotten giving her. I have a meeting at 9. I'll be back at 7 tonight. Have it ready." Not "can you help us?" Not "would you consider it?" Have it ready. The same tone her mother had used for 30 years. The same expectation that my money, my life, my choices were really theirs to make. She walked out, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and the echo of those designer heels on my kitchen floor. The door clicked shut with finality. I sat alone in my kitchen, coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at that number. $185,000, but it wasn't the first time, was it? 2 years ago, $25,000. "Temporary loan, Dad. I'll pay you back in 3 months. Never did. Last year, $45,000. Business emergency. You know I'm good for it. Still waiting. Each time a little bigger, a little more urgent, a little less polite." This time felt different, though. This time she hadn't even pretended it was a loan. My hands started shaking as Victoria's voice echoed in my head, clear as if she were standing right behind me instead of 8 years in the ground. "A husband provides, Mason, no questions asked. That's what real men do." She'd said it for 30 years, every time I dared to question a purchase, a decision, a demand. Every Friday, I'd hand over my paycheck like a good soldier. She decided what we spent, what we saved, where we lived, who we saw. I told myself it was easier that way, that good husbands didn't question their wives. That peace was worth the price of silence. And now here was Sofia, standing in the same kitchen where her mother had trained me to surrender, using the same words, the same tone, the same absolute certainty that I would comply. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. I looked around at 32 years of my life contained in this house. The couch where Sofia had taken her first steps. The window Victoria had replaced twice because the first contractor didn't do it right. The kitchen table where this morning my own daughter had demanded everything I had left. This house wasn't even in my name. Victoria had made sure it would go to Sofia in her will. Everything I'd worked for every day at Boeing, every promotion, every project, had gone into accounts I never saw, decisions I never made, a future I'd never chosen. And now Sofia wanted the last of it. I'd have nothing left. Maybe a year or two if I was careful, if nothing went wrong, if I didn't get sick. And then what? When that ran out, would she come back with another folder, another demand, another reminder of what fathers are supposed to do? The answer hit me like cold water splashing over my head. Of course she would. This would never end. She'd take and take until there was nothing left, until I was nothing. A dried-up well, a broken ATM, a father who'd given everything and received nothing but contempt in return. My chest tightened as the full weight of 32 years crashed down on me. I was 58 years old, and I'd never made a single decision for myself. Victoria had made them all. Then she died and left me with a daughter who'd learned every manipulation, every guilt trip, every emotional weapon from her mother's playbook. I was going to die in this kitchen, alone and empty, unless... The thought came quietly, like a whisper in the back of my mind, unless I said no. Unless I finally, for the first time in my adult life, chose myself over everyone else's demands. My hand moved to my phone, the old flip phone I'd carried for 10 years because Victoria had said smartphones were unnecessarily expensive. There was a number I hadn't called in 45 years, a friendship I'd sacrificed on the altar of marital peace. Vincent Parker, college roommate, best man at my wedding, until Victoria decided we didn't need him around anymore. He's a bad influence, Mason, always questioning things, always making you think you deserve better. So I'd let that friendship die, like I'd let everything else die. Because it was easier than fighting, because good husbands don't have friends their wives disapprove of. But Vincent was a lawyer now, and I had nowhere else to turn. I dialed before I could change my mind. 1 ring, 2, 3. My heart hammered against my ribs as I listened to the phone ring in my ear. What if he didn't want to talk to me? What if 45 years was too long? What if... Hello? His voice, older but unmistakably Vincent. Still carrying that slight Boston accent from our college days. My throat closed completely. The words I'd planned vanished like smoke. "Hello?" he repeated. "If this is a robocall, I'm hanging up in 3 seconds." "Vincent." It came out broken, barely a whisper. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. 45 years of silence, of choosing peace over friendship, of letting Victoria cut away every person who might remind me I had choices. Then, quietly, "Mason? Mason Brooks, is that really you?" The sound of my name and his voice broke something inside me. I started crying right there in my kitchen, 58 years old and sobbing like a child. "Vincent, The words caught in my throat. "I need help, please. I don't know who else to call." Another pause, and I could hear him moving, probably sitting up straighter, the way he used to when we studied together and he'd switch into serious mode. "Tell me where you are," he said, his voice steady and sure. "I'm on my way." I gave him my address, the same house where Victoria had forbidden his visits all those years ago. "Vincent, I don't know if you can... Mason." His voice cut through my panic. "I've been waiting 45 years for you to call. I'm already getting my keys." The line went dead, and I sat staring at my phone, hardly believing what I'd just done. For the first time since Victoria's funeral, I'd reached out to someone who knew me before I became a walking checkbook. I spent the next 40 minutes pacing between my kitchen and living room, checking the window every few seconds like a kid waiting for Christmas morning. My mind kept cycling through worst-case scenarios. What if Vincent saw how pathetic I'd become? What if he thought I was weak for staying with Victoria all those years? What if he couldn't help? Then a silver Honda Accord pulled into my driveway, and through the windshield I saw a familiar face, older and grayer, but carrying the same confident bearing I remembered from college. Vincent Parker stepped out of his car like he'd been here yesterday instead of nearly half a century ago. He didn't knock. Just walked through my front door like the old days, briefcase in one hand, car keys in the other, gray hair where there used to be brown, reading glasses perched on his nose, but still moving with that same purposeful energy that had made him the best study partner I'd ever had. Jesus, Mason. His eyes swept over me, taking in what I must look like. Hollow-eyed, defeated, probably 20 pounds thinner than when Victoria was alive to make sure I ate her cooking. What has she done to you? I tried to speak, but no words came. Instead, I handed him Sofia's folder. Vincent flipped through it in silence, his lawyer brain processing the documents while his face grew darker with each page. When he finished, he looked up at me with something between anger and heartbreak. She's not asking, Mason. She's demanding, just like Victoria used to do. The sound of her name made me flinch. Even 8 years dead, Victoria's influence filled this house like a toxic fog. "We have 8 hours before she comes back," Vincent said, checking his watch. "A simple Timex, not the gold monstrosity Sofia wore. Move your money, get legal protection, get you out. Today. Vincent, I can't just..." "You can't what? Leave? Disappear? Take control of your own money?" He grabbed my shoulders, forced me to meet his eyes. "Mason, she's not your daughter anymore. She's your parasite. When does it stop?" The question hit me like a physical blow. When does it stop? It doesn't. It never stops. Not until there's nothing left to take. Vincent opened his briefcase on my kitchen table, right where Sofia had thrown her demands 3 hours earlier. "Come on. First stop, the bank." In his car, he explained the plan with the same methodical precision he'd used to help me through calculus senior year. New account, different bank, online access only. Your name, your control, your decision who gets access. "She won't find it?" I asked, feeling like a fugitive from my own family. "Not unless you tell her." "And Mason?" He glanced at me while we sat at a red light. "You're not telling her." First National Bank sat on Elm and 4th, a squat brick building I'd driven past 1,000 times but never entered. Inside, the air conditioning hummed quietly while Vincent explained our situation to Charlotte May, the branch manager. Charlotte knew me by reputation, Boeing retiree, recently widowed, probably a safe bet for any financial institution. But when she saw Vincent's briefcase and the intensity in our faces, her professional smile faltered. "Mr. Brooks, we need to move all your funds to a new account at a different institution," Vincent said without preamble. Charlotte pulled up my account on her computer and her eyebrows rose toward her hairline. $320,000. That's your entire savings portfolio. 35 years of work. Every overtime shift at Boeing, every Christmas bonus I'd turned over to Victoria for our future, every vacation I'd skipped because we needed to be responsible. All of it, sitting in an account I barely knew how to access. "I'm moving it," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Sir, may I ask why? If someone is pressuring you financially..." "No one's pressuring him," Vincent interrupted firmly. "He's making a choice he should have made years ago." Charlotte looked between us, probably wondering if she was witnessing elder abuse or liberation. In a way, I suppose she was witnessing both. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Mr. Brooks?" She'd known Victoria, had probably processed plenty of transfers at my late wife's direction. "This is a significant decision." I thought about Sofia's face this morning, the way she'd looked through me like I was furniture, the casual cruelty in her voice when she'd dismissed my life as minimal expenses. For the first time in 58 years, I was absolutely certain about something. Yes. 25 minutes later, my old account showed 0. The new one, at a different bank, in my name only, with online access I could control from anywhere in the world, showed $320,000. Still there, still mine, just finally, truly safe. "Next stop," Vincent said as we walked back to his car, legal protection. The public notary's office on 5th Street was a cramped space that smelled like old paper and coffee. Vincent had somehow produced a stack of documents while I was moving my money. Power of attorney forms, living will updates, financial protection orders. "Sign here, here, and here," he said, pointing to highlighted lines. "This creates a legal paper trail proving you were of sound mind when you made these decisions. If Sofia tries to claim you're incompetent or file for emergency conservatorship, these documents will protect you. My pen hesitated over the first signature line. Would she really do that? Try to have me declared incompetent? Vincent's silence was answer enough. I signed everything. By 2:30 we were back in his car, and Vincent was showing me something on his phone that made my heart race. Flight 1847 to Austin, departing at 6 p.m. Austin? I stared at the screen. Texas? I've got a rental property there. Small apartment near Lady Bird Lake. Yours as long as you need it. He was already booking the ticket. New start. Clean slate. Different state. Different life. I'd never been to Austin. Never been anywhere Victoria hadn't approved of. The farthest I'd traveled in 20 years was to her sister's funeral in Cincinnati. I can't just leave everything, I protested weakly. Vincent turned to look at me, really look at me. Mason, what exactly are you leaving? A house that's not in your name? A daughter who sees you as an ATM? Memories of a woman who spent 30 years controlling every aspect of your existence. He pulled up my new bank account on his phone. $320,000. My money. My control. You're not leaving everything, he said softly. You're taking everything that matters. Your freedom. The word hung in the air between us like a promise. Freedom. I stared at my phone, trying to process what was happening. This morning I'd been a broken man facing impossible demands. Now I was looking at a plane ticket to a new life. Vincent, I don't know how to thank you. He gripped my shoulder, and for a moment we were 20 years old again, best friends taking on the world together. You can thank me by living, Mason. Really living. For the first time in your adult life. We pulled into my driveway. 3 p.m. 4 hours until Sofia returned. 4 hours to pack up 58 years and disappear. Let's get you out of here, Vincent said. And for the first time since Victoria died, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Vincent helped me pack in silence that felt sacred, like we were performing some kind of ritual. 32 years of my life had to fit into one backpack. It was harder than I'd imagined, not because I owned so much, but because I owned so little that actually mattered. 3 changes of clothes, my medications, important documents Vincent had helped me organize, the photo of young Sofia from her 6th birthday, gap-toothed and innocent, before Victoria's poison had time to work. And my old fishing rod from the garage, the one Victoria had called a waste of space but somehow never made me throw away. By 4 p.m., everything I cared about was zipped into a backpack that weighed maybe 20 pounds. I stood in the center of my living room one last time, that bag at my feet like a faithful dog waiting for adventure. The house felt different already, like it knew I was leaving. The couch where Sofia had taken her first steps seemed smaller. The family photos on the mantel looked like pictures of strangers. The kitchen table where this morning had changed everything sat empty, waiting for the next act of this drama. I walked through each room slowly, saying goodbye to a life that had never really been mine. The living room where Victoria had hidden our financial documents in a locked cabinet I'd never been allowed to touch. The den where she'd made all our major decisions while I sat quietly, grateful not to be bothered with complicated things. The bedroom where she'd died 8 years ago, leaving me instructions even from her deathbed about how to live the rest of my life. In the hallway, I stopped at our photo gallery. Sofia at every age, smiling in pictures that told the story of how love can curdle into expectation. There she was at 6, hugging my leg at the zoo. At 16, rolling her eyes at my attempt to teach her to drive. At 22, graduating college with honors I'd paid for without question. At 28, married to Marcus in a wedding that cost more than my first car. When had she stopped seeing me as her father and started seeing me as her personal bank? "I'm sorry," I whispered to the photo of her 6th birthday. "I couldn't save you from becoming her." In the kitchen, I pulled out a sheet of notebook paper and sat at the table where this morning Sofia had delivered her ultimatum. My hand shook as I wrote, "Sofia, the one who's disappointed is me. This debt can't be paid with money. You need to learn what I should have taught you years ago. There are consequences to using people who love you. You have a choice now. You can rage about this and plot revenge, or you can take a long look in the mirror and ask yourself when you stopped being my daughter and became my creditor. I hope you choose wisely. Dad. I left it in the center of the table, right where she'd thrown her demands this morning. Let her find it when she came back expecting her check. Vincent waited by the front door, patient as always. He didn't rush me, didn't check his watch, just stood there like he had all the time in the world. That's what I'd forgotten about friendship, the gift of unhurried presence. I grabbed my backpack, took one last look at the hallway photos, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, I turned back for a final glance at 32 years of surrender. You know what the strangest thing is? I said to Vincent. I don't feel sad. What do you feel? I thought about it as I turned off the lights and locked the door behind me. Light, like I've been carrying a weight I didn't know was there. The drive to DFW took 45 minutes through Dallas traffic that would normally have stressed me out. But sitting in Vincent's passenger seat, watching the city slide past, I felt detached from it all. This was someone else's traffic, someone else's problems. I was already gone. Nervous about flying? Vincent asked as we pulled into airport parking. I realized I wasn't. For the first time in decades, I was doing something completely unpredictable, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Security line at 6:30 p.m. I kept checking my watch, imagining Sofia pulling into my empty driveway right about now, finding the dark house, using her key, walking into the kitchen and finding my note instead of a check for $185,000. The image should have made me feel guilty. Instead, it made me feel free. Boarding Group C, the gate agent called. Vincent walked me to the gate. His flight back to New York wasn't until tomorrow morning. He'd extended his trip just to see me off. You sure about this? He asked one last time. I thought about Victoria's voice, always telling me what I couldn't do, shouldn't want, didn't deserve. I thought about Sofia's cold eyes this morning, looking right through me to the money behind my ribs. More sure than I've been about anything since college, I said. Vincent pulled me into a hug. The first real hug I'd received since Victoria's funeral when people hugged me out of obligation. This was different. This was someone choosing to hold on to me. Call me when you land, he said. I will. Window seat, row 12. As Southwest Flight 1847 taxied toward the runway, I watched Dallas shrink beneath us. Somewhere down there, Sofia was probably screaming at my empty house. Somewhere down there was everything I'd ever known about being a man, a husband, a father. The plane lifted, and Dallas disappeared under clouds. Welcome aboard Flight 1847 to Austin. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Flight time is approximately 1 hour. Sit back and enjoy your journey. My phone vibrated against my leg. 7:15 p.m. Right on schedule. I pulled it out. The screen showed Sofia calling. My finger hovered over the green button. For just a moment, 58 years of conditioning kicked in. Answer the phone. Fix the problem. Do what family expects. Then I pressed the power button instead, held it down until the screen went dark, turned the phone off completely. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes, and felt something I hadn't experienced in 45 years. The complete absence of anyone else's expectations. No voice in my head telling me what I should do, ought to feel, had to provide. For the first time since Vincent and I were college roommates, I was alone with my own thoughts. And they were quiet. Austin Bergstrom International Airport welcomed me with warm air and the smell of barbecue from a restaurant near baggage claim. By the time I caught a cab to Vincent's rental property, it was almost 11 p.m., but the Texas heat still radiated off the pavement like a promise. 1247 Riverside Drive, I told the driver, reading the address from Vincent's text. The apartment building sat 3 blocks from Lady Bird Lake, a modest complex that probably housed young professionals and retirees looking for affordable waterfront living. The key was exactly where Vincent had said, under a potted cactus by Unit 3B, 600 square feet of freedom. Murphy bed folded into the wall, tiny kitchenette with everything I needed and nothing I didn't. Sliding glass door leading to a small balcony that overlooked the lake. Vincent had paid first and last month's rent. $1,200 a month for a space that was smaller than my old bedroom but felt infinite compared to the prison I'd been living in. I unpacked my backpack. Everything I owned fit in one closet with room to spare. That first night, I sat on the balcony listening to water lap against the shore, watching the Austin skyline reflect in the lake like scattered diamonds. Kayakers drifted past in the darkness, their paddle strokes barely disturbing the surface. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard real silence. Not the oppressive quiet of a house where you're afraid to make noise, but the peaceful silence of a place where no one expected anything from you. At 5 a.m., old Boeing habit, I was awake watching the sun climb over Lady Bird Lake. The water turned gold, then silver, then blue as the city came alive around me. My eyes stung and I realized I was crying. But for the first time in years, they were tears of something good. I needed purpose. At 58, I wasn't ready to just sit on a balcony for the rest of my life, no matter how peaceful it was. 3 blocks down Riverside Drive, a bell jingled as I entered Lake Travis Tackle Shop. The smell of rubber worms and coffee hit me like a memory from childhood fishing trips with my own father. A weathered man looked up from behind the counter, kind eyes and a face that had spent decades in the Texas sun. "Help you with something?" "I need basic gear," I said. "Haven't fished in about 20 years. His whole face lit up like I'd just told him I'd won the lottery. "Well, you came to the right place." Gabriel Stone. He reached across the counter to shake my hand. "Just moved to Austin. Yesterday. Mason Brooks." Gabriel pulled out a laminated lake map, marked it with a red pen. "Best spot for largemouth bass is right there. End of the fishing pier at dawn. Water's still cool enough that they're feeding early." I bought a basic rod and reel combo, tackle box, some simple lures. Gabriel threw in extra hooks and a landing net. "Welcome to Austin," he said as I paid. "Tight lines, my friend." Walking back to my apartment with fishing gear in my hands, I felt something I hadn't experienced since I was a boy. Anticipation for tomorrow. Day 3 in Austin, I caught my first fish in 20 years. 2 largemouth bass and a decent catfish, their silver bodies flashing in the morning sun as I reeled them in from Lady Bird Lake. My hands shook as I cleaned them, not from fear, but from pure joy. I'd forgotten what it felt like to accomplish something just because I wanted to. Saturday morning, I set up a small table at the Riverside Farmers Market with a handwritten sign. Fresh caught fish, $8 per pound. Sold out in 2 hours, made $67. A woman with kind eyes smiled as she bought my last bass. Best fish I've had in months. "You here every Saturday?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, and meant it. A routine formed that felt like healing. Dawn fishing, cleaning the catch, Saturday market sales. Evenings on my balcony with a notebook, writing thoughts I'd never dared think before. Day 5 in Austin. 22 missed calls from Sofia. Haven't listened to one voicemail. Is this what peace feels like? One morning, Gabriel from the tackle shop cast his line beside mine at the pier. We fished in comfortable silence for an hour before he spoke. "You ran from something, didn't you?" I watched my bobber drift on the current. I ran to something, my own life. Gabriel nodded, didn't push for details. That's how friendship worked here. Slow, patient, earned through shared sunrise mornings and mutual respect for silence. By week 3, I was sleeping through the night for the first time in years. The knot in my chest had loosened. Austin wasn't home yet, but it was becoming something I'd chosen for myself. Then everything changed. Saturday morning, week 4. I was setting up my fish table when a thin man approached, sunglasses despite the overcast sky. When he removed them, my heart stopped. Marcus Reed, Sofia's husband. A fresh bruise yellowed his left cheekbone, and his hands trembled as he sat on the bench beside my table. "Mason," he whispered, "we need to talk." I closed my fish stand and joined him on a bench away from the morning crowd. Up close, he looked worse, thinner than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes, the defeated posture of a man living in fear. "I'm so sorry about everything," he began, his voice barely audible. "The debt. It's not $185,000. It's over $300,000 and growing every day." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "She's been lying for years, Mason. Gambling debts, bad investments she called business opportunities. She used your social security number to open credit lines, forged your signature on loan documents." He pulled out his phone, Showed me text messages from unknown numbers, threats about Brooks's debt, demands for payment, photos of our old house. She hit me last night when I said I was coming to warn you. Marcus's voice broke. I can't take Theodore and Amelia and run because she controls everything. Our phones, bank accounts, even the car registration. I stared at him, this broken man who'd married my daughter thinking he was getting a partner, not a predator. How long has she been hitting you? Since before the kids were born. She learned it from watching how your wife treated you, Mason. The financial control, the emotional manipulation, the violence when things don't go her way. The words hit me like physical blows. Victoria's legacy, passed down like a family curse. I gave Marcus $200 from my market earnings and bought him a burner phone at the corner store. Get somewhere safe. Take the kids. I can't. She'll find us, and the legal system. He shook his head. Who believes a man when he says his wife beats him? 2 days later, someone knocked on my apartment door. A woman in a blazer with a badge on her belt. Mr. Brooks? Detective Sofia Martinez, Travis County Financial Crimes Unit. She sat at my tiny dining table, opened a thick folder that looked disturbingly like the one Sofia had dropped on my kitchen table months ago. Multiple accounts opened in your name. Fraudulent loans totaling $480,000. Your daughter has been very busy and very good at what she does. $480,000. More than I'd saved in 35 years at Boeing. She's been running this scam for over 3 years, Detective Martinez continued. Small amounts at first, building your credit profile, then larger loans as your credit worthiness improved. We've been investigating organized financial fraud, and your name kept appearing. She showed me documents I'd never seen, signatures I'd never made, debts that could have destroyed me if I'd stayed in Dallas. We need your cooperation to prosecute. But Mr. Brooks, you should know, these people she owes, they don't care that you didn't sign these papers. They just want their money from someone named Mason Brooks. I looked at the evidence of a criminal enterprise run by my own daughter. What do you need from me? The call came at 2 a.m. 3 weeks later. Detective Martinez's voice was steady but grim. Sofia Brooks was arrested 2 hours ago. Domestic violence, obstruction of justice, resisting arrest. Marcus and the children are safe. I sat up in bed, hand over my mouth. Marcus tried to gather evidence of the fraud from her laptop. She attacked him, and 10-year-old Theodore called 911. When officers arrived, she shoved a sergeant and tried to flee. My grandson, watching his mother's violence, brave enough to call for help. She's being held, without bail, flight risk and history of violence. We're charging fraud, identity theft, domestic violence, and assaulting an officer. The trial took place 4 months later in a Travis County courthouse that felt both foreign and familiar. Sofia sat at the defendant's table in orange jail scrubs, thinner and harder than I remembered. When I took the witness stand, she stared at me with flat, cold eyes. Mr. Brooks, the prosecutor began, describe your relationship with the defendant. She was my daughter. I raised her to believe that family takes care of each other. I was wrong. I taught her that love means never saying no, that fathers exist to solve their children's problems with money. I told the court about 32 years of surrender, about Victoria's financial control, about the pattern that had poisoned 2 generations. Were you aware your daughter had opened these fraudulent accounts? No. I learned about it the same way I learned she was hitting her husband, when someone finally got brave enough to tell the truth. During cross-examination, Sofia's attorney tried to paint me as a neglectful father who'd abandoned his family in their time of need. Mr. Brooks, don't you think fathers should sacrifice everything for their children? I looked directly at Sofia. I sacrificed 30 years of my life to her mother's control, and then I sacrificed my savings, my peace of mind, and my self-respect to my daughter's demands. But sacrifice without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender, and it teaches the wrong lessons. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Judge Williams was clear and firm. Ms. Brooks, you systematically defrauded your father, endangered your family, and showed no remorse. 12 years in state prison, $480,000 restitution, 5 years supervised release. As they led her away in shackles, Sofia turned and mouthed words I couldn't hear but could read on her lips. This isn't over. 6 months after the trial, I stood before 60 strangers in an Austin community center, my hands steadier now as I gripped the microphone. My name is Mason Brooks. I'm 60 years old, and for 40 years I was a human ATM machine. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. I'm here to tell you three things. First, it's never too late to choose yourself over other people's demands. Second, sacrifice without boundaries isn't love, it's slow suicide. And third, you cannot save someone who's determined to drown, but you can choose not to drown with them. After my talk, a man approached, Nicholas Reed, who'd also been married to Victoria decades before me. We started Fresh Start Dads, a support group for men recovering from financial and emotional abuse. By the end of the year, we had 85 members and partnerships with legal aid clinics across Texas. I'm 60 now. I don't know if Sofia will change during her 12 years in prison. I hope she will, for Theodore and Amelia's sake. But I'm not waiting to find out. Every morning, I watch the sunrise over Lady Bird Lake with my coffee and my journal. I fish when I want to, eat what I like, spend my money on things that bring me joy. Vincent visits quarterly, and we laugh about the boys we used to be and the men we became. Here's what I learned. Real love requires real boundaries. Real family respects them. And it's never too late to discover that saying yes to yourself doesn't mean saying no to love. It means finally understanding what love actually looks like. That's my story. That's my lesson. If this touched you, if you've ever felt like an ATM for your family, share your story. You're not alone. And it's never too late to choose freedom.